Good evening and welcome to episode 3 of The Pivot. My name is TJ Owens. I am the Cultural Program Manager and Facility Director of the African American Culture and Heritage Facility. We want to thank you for taking the time for joining our podcast this evening. We are joined by Kristen Pierce, who is the Executive Director of Austin Child Guidance Center, and also Asha Creary, CEO and lead practitioner or licensed professional counselor of Crave Counseling. How are y'all doing this evening?
Really well, TJ, thanks.
Yes, doing well. Thank you for allowing us to be here and asking us to join.
For sure. So for March, just to kind of get our audience up to speed, we are doing a 2-part episode series called Mind, Body, and Soul. So This episode, we are featuring on the mind part of body and soul. And on the second episode, we'll be featuring more on the physical aspects and highlighting how it all ties into mental health and mental fitness. So March being Mental Health Month, we want to highlight mental health services, specifically in communities of color. So with that said, I want to get into a couple of questions. Like I said, it's going to be very casual. We're going to have a lot of fun, but just kind of want to talk about really the BIPOC community specific of mental health. I know that a lot of people do not really visualize themselves as kind of having an opportunity to be a mental health professional if you're a person of color. So, Kristen, if you don't mind, maybe share your path on how you kind of got into the mental health industry, and just kind of give us that rundown, kind of a map of how you got to where you are today.
Sure. So my godmother she got her PhD from Columbia University, and so when I was a child, and she was in school, and she mostly worked with young children in Head Start programs, but I would say that she was really my inspiration, kind of my mentor when I was young, in terms of considering a field in mental health services. One thing that kind of was not interesting to me about what she was doing was that, she seemed like she was in school forever at the time. And she had to spend a lot of time doing research. And that was actually a little bit less interesting to me. So originally, when I went to college, I was like, I'm going to major in psychology, just like this person that meant so much to me. But then when I got to college, I started to have concerns about my ability to have appropriate boundaries with young children, because at that time I was still focused on working with little kids, and I really thought I'd want to take them all home with me. And I thought, you really have to have good boundaries to do this, and maybe my boundaries aren't so good. So I majored in English instead, thinking I'd kind of figure the thing out later. I had no interest in teaching, but I felt at the time that my boundaries were not appropriate to work with young kids. And so when I got out of college, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And so I had a career kind of doing some other things. And then when my youngest child was like 2 years old, I had been married for a little while. I got married young and had kids young. And so I thought, a lot of my friends were asking me, questions about, what's it like being married? What's it like having a child? How do you manage these things? And I found a marriage and family therapy program. And when I saw the definition of what that was, because I'd never heard of marriage and family therapy, I thought, this is it. This is exactly what I want to be doing. This is all the parts about that I liked, minus the research. And so I went back to graduate school in my early 30s, and have not regretted it a day since. So I've been a licensed marriage and family therapist and supervisor for a very long time. And I thought, I love this. This is the thing I've always wanted to do. And I figured I'd be doing clinical work for the rest of my life. And then change. And over time, I was offered opportunities that included more administration and more management. And I wasn't sure I would like it. I just couldn't imagine a world in which I wasn't seeing clients all the time. But as it turned out, I really did like it. I had an affinity and a joy with supervising up and coming mental health professionals. It seemed to me that some of the supervision kind of scratched that same itch, if you will, about actually working with clients. I got enough of the clinical through the supervision. in my previous role as the director of counseling services at Catholic Charities, I saw a few clients, but mostly administrative work. And in my current capacity, as executive director, I don't see any clients at ACGC. I do provide supervision for some people outside of work who are working towards their full licensure, and I get enough of the clientele that way. So I used to have a private practice in Westlake, but I gave that up when I kind of took larger roles. And I have to say, nobody was more surprised than I was at the fact that I was able to sort of enjoy my work, even though I wasn't directly seeing clients anymore. But it is, this job that I have now is certainly the best job I've ever had. I love my work. I can talk about children's mental health and families' mental health all day long. And this allows me to do that. So that's sort of been my journey.
Awesome. Real quick, as you were talking, a question kind of came to mind. So, my past experience has had to do a lot with small business and working with entrepreneurs and kind of like, developing them and helping them, I guess, their business scale and grow. Right. And as you were speaking, I kind of was thinking about some parallelism there, because you went from being, a therapist, or a counselor that was seeing clients to now being on the administrative side. Can you talk to us a little bit about some of those differences, or maybe because that's a big change, to go from seeing clients to go to, administering and being an administrator and being responsible for budgets. And, that's a different set of problems. So can you talk about that change?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. It is a different set of problems. And I'll be honest, I was not, when you start your own private practice, you become a small business owner. There's no question about that. And I was actually pretty bad about the business aspects. It just, it's the less interesting part if you're a mental health professional. What you like is the therapy, the business part, the insurance part, all that stuff is a lot less interesting. I think for me, what changed was the administrative parts. When it was just me, I think I kind of was a little bit lax because the only person that got hurt in those instances was me. Yeah. I think the minute that I took on administrative roles in an agency or a larger organization where there are lots of other people that were going to be impacted by my ability to be organized and, kind of focused, changed that a lot. I think, when people are counting on you and looking to you for leadership and guidance, when people are asking you to build their business or grow their business, and you're looking at all these people that may otherwise not receive services. And so in order for more people who need the services to receive the services, I need to be better at what I'm doing. I need to be focused. I need to be organized. I need to be on top of this. And I think for me, that kind of motivation was the thing that really made the difference. It matters to me that people who need and want services are able to access them. And so if that means that I need to sift through pages of spreadsheets, I'll do that. It's just, I think when the lives of others were dependent on me being good at my job, sometimes that's kind of when you step up and you step into whatever's being asked of you.
Sure. And Asha, I know that you going into your practice, you've had a unique path. Please share it.
My path was a path of avoidance. I never thought that I would be a licensed professional counselor or even work in the mental health field. I am definitely one of those people I don't like to get in other people's problems, but yet that is what I do for a living. So I'll say when I first went to college, I was going to be this grand old anesthesiologist, and I got into my first weed out class. Didn't know what that was because I grew up in an environment where like a lot of us really didn't go to college like that. And so when I got to college, went through my first weed out class, and it was chemistry, first semester in. And I thought I was going to flunk out, and I ended up transitioning campuses. I went from UT Dallas to UT Arlington. I was like, okay, I'm going to the nursing program. Again, still avoiding these things because I still have friends calling me. I still have family calling me, asking me, what should I do with this? What should I do with that? And I was like, I don't want to go into that. And so I ended up not finishing, or I got into the program, but they had one of those situations where they over accepted so many students. And so they did a lottery pick and removed some of us from that that list to start the actual semester and pushed us back a semester. And I was one of those students, and I was like, nope, I'm graduating on time because I don't have any intentions on staying here a semester longer or a year longer, because that's what it would have done for me. And I ended up transitioning into a bachelor's level degree in university studies. I came out, I took the teacher exam, passed it, in my first year into teaching. That first day, I actually applied to a graduate program to get into a school counseling program. And then when I started, I was like, ooh, I should do both. So I ended up doing school counseling in the LPC licensure process at the same time while getting my master's degree. And by the time I finished, I set one more year of teaching middle school math, and then I transitioned over into lead counseling down in Austin. And so I did that for 2 years, and I knew that that wasn't enough. I always set a goal for myself, and then I transitioned into a specialist role. I did that for about a year and a few months. Again, same district in Austin. And I always worked part-time as an entrepreneur doing private practice once I fully got my license. So the internship hours were gained as a school counselor, but I also did like part-time stuff. The thing that I would say that I missed the most in that entire transition was being a victim advocate at the Women's Center in Tarrant County. And so I did a lot of crisis work where I would be dispatched out to hospitals anytime someone came in with rape situations or sexual assault or molestation. So I missed that part of things. So I've always kind of been in and out of mental health. Well, not in and out, but like different fields of mental health. So I did the school system. I worked at a mental health hospital. I did, advocacy and volunteer work. And then I eventually transitioned into my own private practice. And I can definitely empathize on the insurance issues. I'm just now learning what secondary claims are, and I was like, okay, this is new. But it's always a journey of learning. And I definitely am looking to transition into supervision here soon as well. So I'm
Awesome.
licensed in Texas, and I'm licensed in Missouri as well. So
Awesome. As you were talking, I have one piggyback question that came to mind. You were talking about avoidance, and I guess kind of a pull into the mental health industry. I know we were just talking about within communities of color, some of the stigmas around, mental health and mental health services. And I think one thing is that some people may not identify with their passions. If you don't mind, maybe speak to, not necessarily situationally, but maybe what were some of the qualities that you found inside yourself that you felt would make you a great mental health professional?
Oh, that's a good one. Of course, they always tell you if you go into mental health or social work, you will never make money. And I will say that my biggest thing is like, I have to be able to survive. But in that thought, it was, me figuring out what my purpose is. So my purpose has always been to be a blessing to other people. And at first I was like, okay, being a teacher, that's being a blessing. But then once I got into the actual role of teaching, and I saw like how students looked up to me as a mentor, they would literally come to my class, sit in there, ask me questions. And I will say, if I knew the kid, I knew what the grandma was doing. I knew what the mama was doing. I knew what the neighbor down the street was doing. And so it kind of was one of those things where like my students pushed me into that. Not only that, my friends pushed me into it. And then, of course, we, in our community, mental health is one of those things that is suppressed, and it's one of those things that's not talked about. And of course, you go to church and then you kind of keep the services out of your household. And so I was like, no, we can definitely change that stigma, because I can still be a professional and provide supports to you, but I also can support you in your struggle at the same time, while being a professional with a similar background as the people that I'm working with.
Awesome. Thank you for that response. Kristen, I know that when it comes to mental health services, some may feel that, they just may need 1 or 2 hours and then, life returns to normal, right? But, the state of one's mental health is with us and drives our actions literally from second to second throughout the day. Please share, Austin Child Guidance Center's, their total family approach to mental health services?
Okay. I guess I want to start by saying that, I think there are some instances maybe in which, you kind of just need to talk something out. Maybe you're struggling to make a decision. And so maybe there are circumstances in which, an hour or two can sort you out, in the sense that you're maybe just sort of need to a sounding board or someone to help you to kind of really think through an issue. But by and large, I think most concerns that bring people to therapy are not things that are necessarily easily sorted out. I always tell people, or I used to tell people when they would come see me, whatever this issue is, if you could have figured it out on your own, you would have done that. You're coming to see me because you weren't able to figure it out on your own. And there's no shame in that, right? There's absolutely no shame in that. But that's the truth. As people, and our society teaches us to, like, we're all about fixing things, right? So we're trying to fix ourselves, we're trying to fix our kids, we're trying to fix our neighbors, and we want to do that on our own wherever possible. So typically people are coming to therapy, or they're taking their child to therapy after they have tried to fix it, whatever it is, on their own. So at Austin Child Guidance Center, we basically just have a family therapy approach, which means that any child who comes to our office, we're going to see them and their family or their caregiver, whomever that is, in some kind of context. Their family is going to be part of their treatment. And so, whether it's an adolescent who's, having some behavioral issues, whether it's a child who has tremendous anxiety and can't sleep at night, whatever the issue, or a child who's experienced considerable trauma. The thing about children, and I would argue that this is true of all people, but certainly children, one-on-one treatment with a child, no matter how amazing I am as a therapist, they go home to their family, and there's no individual that has more influence on a child than their family. For better or for worse, the influence of a family is bigger than any teacher, any other adult in their life. And so any amazing work that I might do one-on-one with this child, if it's not reinforced at home, or if there's no family support, it kind of goes out the window. So we definitely use a family therapy approach, regardless of what the circumstance or the issue. We always include family members or our child care providers in the treatment when we work with kids.
So just to kind of expand on that a little bit, when you all work with youth, is there like an initial period where you kind of assess that support system for that child to know, okay, well, because I know for some kids, it may be one parent, some kids may heavily rely upon the influence of a teacher or a mentor or kind of whoever is around them, to try to see what those primary influences are, and maybe what are some of those very important secondary, influences as well.
Absolutely. Usually it depends on who's referring the child and what the circumstances are. But, we see kids in foster care. It doesn't have to be biological parents. It has to be whoever the primary caregiver is, right? And if there is a teacher that the child is particularly attached to, assuming that the family signs a release allowing us to speak to the teacher, we certainly would include that person if it was relevant and made sense to the treatment. Wherever and whomever provides support for the child is sort of the resource that we're using to help to use in the treatment of the child. So, we do a lot of assessments when they first come in to sort of determine what the circumstances are, what their needs are. Kind of, a lot of kids are having issues in school, right? So that might involve more teachers, guidance counselors, things like that. Other kids who are struggling, with something that happened in their family, or I don't know, maybe it's an issue with a step parent, or some separation in the family, a divorce or a separation is taking place, or it really just depends on the circumstances. But whatever the issue, we're going to be working with whomever is taking care of this child to help support them and to integrate that individual or individuals into their treatment.
Awesome. I think that's super important. And it kind of really brings that structure to that time that you spend with that child, acknowledging those influences and even relying on them to really leverage what you're doing when you have that individual time with them. That's great. I usually always do just a bit of an inside scoop with our audience. I usually have a pre-interview with all of our guests, and I was speaking with Asha, and an actual paradigm shift happened when I was talking with her, because she was sharing with me that a lot of people, when they seek out mental health services, that they often think something is wrong with them. And that's usually the story that's told, whether it's someone in your family, cousin so-and-so is a little different, right? It's a little bit off, right? But and even though that might be true, to a certain degree, one thing that was, kind of a light bulb moment for myself was we don't really acknowledge the environment that we're subjected to and the toll of that environment on us as individuals. So, Asha, can you kind of just rehash that and kind of expand on it a little bit for our audience?
Yeah. So, there's two things that I always end up coming back to full circle in almost every counseling session, or even just conversations with the people that I'm having that's asking me questions about mental health. One of the first things is that, of course, like you said, people think that something's wrong with you because you're seeking services. That's one piece of it. But then the other part of it has a lot to do with how society has almost extended that therapy is an elitism, or for those of higher socioeconomic status. But I'm here to say, like, it's okay to not be okay. A lot of times we normalize our trauma and we normalize our situations, and we tell ourselves that it's okay. And so since we normalize it, we basically are taking the things that people are telling us, oh, like, it's not normal to seek therapy. It'll be okay. Do it this way. This is what helped me. And it's almost like, first and foremost, it's okay to not be okay. Secondly, I can't normalize my trauma and then tell you that it's okay. Because when I do that, I'm minimizing my true feelings. It impacts my level of vulnerability, and it stops me from being the true individual that I need to be to other people and to myself. So that's a huge part of it. Then on the second part of it, it's a lot of us go to therapy and we're holding on to things that don't belong to us. And so we come into therapy and we're having conversations about, well, this friend has done this to me. My mom told me that I would never amount to anything. My daddy never wanted me, so I'm still seeking acceptance. And it's like, those are not your things to hold on to. Yes, they impact you, but you're holding on to these things, and they're impacting your ability to maneuver between the world in a healthy way. A lot of times I literally ask people, why are you holding on to that? And they're like, what? You're holding on to that expectation that people have of you to be rich, or the expectation that people have of you to be this amazing individual, graduate college with straight A's, making the dean's list. That's not the expectation you have for yourself. So why are you holding on to the expectations that people have of you? Because it's causing you more stress. So at some point, you're going to have to let those things go and remember and remind yourself that it's okay to not be okay. And so that's where I kind of come from when it comes from, like, having that consistent conversation with people over time.
Right. I think, especially during the times that we're in right now, where, human engagement is really coming at a premium, right? I mean, let's just be honest. Most of the times when we see people, when we talk to people, there's this element of isolation that's just embedded in our communication now that just wasn't there before. Kristen, do you mind maybe just talking about how that isolation and some of the factors within just COVID itself have been affecting our youth, and just what you're seeing day in and day out with the kids that you interact with on a daily basis?
Sure, I can, but if it's okay, I just kind of want to add to what
Sure.
I felt like that was such a great comment that she made. I would just add a couple of other things. One, I try to tell people that when they're the point that Asha made about kind of therapy meaning that there's something wrong with you. We as people, we do all kinds of things to maintain our outsides. We get a physical once a year. We go to the dentist every 6 months. We get our hair cut however often. We do all of these things to maintain our outside, nails done, eyebrows waxed, whatever it is that we're all doing, right? But all of that is to maintain our exterior, and I frame therapy as, this is not something that's wrong with you. This is you being proactive. This is you taking care of yourself. This is you tending to your insides and your emotional health and your mental health in the same way that you tend to your physical health. And why not, right? I mean, why wouldn't you do that, right? So I think sometimes it's helpful to people and empowering for people to say, I'm not doing this because I'm deficient in any way or there's something wrong with me in any way. I'm doing this because I'm taking care of myself. I am being proactive. I'm getting in there and addressing things before they're so far gone that it's going to take years and years for me to kind of correct things. So I think that's one point. And I think the other point is that in terms of sort of why you're holding on to things, again, an excellent point. I think too, it's sort of people will live up to the label that you give them. If they the label long enough, even when you give them a label and it doesn't match, if they're given that label long enough, eventually the label will match, which is why it's so important as people, and especially when we're talking about children of color, like it's important that we validate these kids. We talk to them about how smart they are, how beautiful they are, just the way they are. God made you perfect. You're perfect exactly the way you were made, right? We need to validate and talk to kids in a way that makes them feel good about who they are, what they how they think. And even when there are things that we want them to, no child is perfect. So even if there are things that we want them to change or ways that we want them to behave, say please, make sure you say thank you. We can communicate in ways that are positive, right? So we're not saying you didn't do this right, you're bad. We're just saying, hey, next time, please remember to say thank you. Next time, do it this way. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you, or you, right? But I know that, I've got a chocolate daughter, right? And from the day that she was born, I made it a point to always validate her, to always acknowledge how beautiful she is inside and out, to recognize her talents. She's like any child. She had to learn, to be polite and to, how to speak to people and all that. But there are ways that you can do that so that you are building up these kids, so that you're building them up so that the labels that they live up to are labels that say, I'm good enough, I'm pretty, I'm worthy, I'm all these things, and not labels that they're going to live up to that say you're never going to amount to something. And so it's not surprising if ultimately that child doesn't amount to anything. If enough people are telling him or her that, I mean, should we be surprised when that's the outcome, right? So I just think it's really important that we recognize that how we communicate with kids, how we talk to them, or even kind of when they're small, mommy, look at me, daddy, look at me. Look at your child, give them your full attention, make them feel like they're important enough for you to stop what you're doing, to give them your full attention, be present. These are all kind of seemingly small things, but in aggregate, over time, they add up. And what they amount to is insecurity. What they amount to is anxiety. What they amount to is, depression. I mean, they amount to these things and uncertainty. And so we need to really be mindful about that and do all that we can to propose language and give labels that are positive and uplifting.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, getting back to the original. I mean, if you want, I can.
I was like, look, hold on. Let me add to that real quick.
Yeah, sure. That's what happens.
I promise it's gonna be quick though.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
So she starts with the children. I get the adults of the after effect of the things that she's talking about, which is how I ended up in the conversation about, what is it that we're feeding our children's minds? Because those things transition into adults seeking validation, seeking acceptance, seeking this, seeking that. That's one part of it that I wanted to add, but there's also this part of even how we interact with our friends and we maintain those relationships and how we interact with people that we work with and just even people on social media. There's a lot of times where I see people tearing other people down, and those people start to, again, like she says, internalizing that and adopting those views and those policies of themselves. And then they end up in these situations where 10 months down the line, you see this, I just want to commit suicide going across social media. And it's like, well, hold on, wait now, who hurt you? Where did that come from? And it's like, oh, if you go back and look at that person's feed, you see them crying out like, oh, I'm an ugly Black girl, or oh, nobody likes dark-skinned women, or oh, it becomes these things that we start to internalize and we accept it. And so we become helpless in those situations. And again, it starts in childhood. I'm seeking acceptance. I'm seeking validation. I want to be seen. My parents are tied to the laptop. They're working. And don't get me wrong, we understand you have to work. But it doesn't hurt to take a second away from something, right? You can't do it if you pass away. You can't you can't go back and try to cherish moments that you never was present for or was in the moment for. And so just be mindful of that as you're interacting with your children, like she said, but also as adults with your friends, don't minimize your friends. Don't make them feel less than. I see a lot of mean girls groups, even as adult women, and even men, where we're tearing each other down within our friend groups, and our friends are starting to become the things that we're turning them into. So just be mindful of that as well.
No, these are great points, and I almost want to stay here for a little while longer. So as you all were talking, one thing that came into my mind was I started thinking about kind of piggybacking to the original question that I was asking, but it really ties together seamlessly, because a big part of that is that distance. It's so easy when you're isolated as an individual to find other ways to try to validate yourself, and if that means a like on a photo, or how many hearts you get, or how many comments you get, right? Through social media, that tends to shift, even what a friend means, right? That even the definition of what a friend means to an individual can change because of the time that we live in, and then in trying to really understand who do we put our trust in, and the vulnerability or the strength in vulnerability when it comes down to sharing certain things with trusted individuals. So definitely everything that you all said was on point, and I agree with every single thing that you said, and I think pointing out that strength in vulnerability and acknowledging where we are as individuals is so key, and not getting caught up in trying to present a facade or live up to a label, right? That's in essence the same thing, right? You have this ideal that you're trying to live up to that isn't even who you are. So that self-acceptance is super important. I guess we can go to the question that I asked originally, Christian, but and I can go back to it. So I was really just wanting to know that when we talk about the pandemic, kind of going back to that, what are some of the things that you've seen? And we kind of talked about it a little bit, but maybe just speak in depth about what you've seen as far as just your practice and how it has shifted with some of the things that you've kind of come up against, when you're tackling family, even, and I could just imagine, I bet even family approach to therapy has even changed a bit.
It has. So, we've been working remotely almost a year. So all of our services are provided remotely. And so, one big change is that we have sight into people's homes, right? So we're working with people, and we're seeing into, practically into their homes. So the positive side of that is that we have access to additional family members that we didn't really have access to before. Typically, like a parent would bring the child, or occasionally you get a parent and a sibling. But now, it's sort of like who's in the house. It could be grandma, it could be both parents, it could be, multiple siblings. So we have a view into what's going on into the child's home in a way that we didn't have before, which, when you put together circumstances like often for a lot of people, a catastrophic illness, a slowing economy, people losing their jobs or being underemployed, isolation, any kind of families that are dealing with any kind of domestic violence, spousal abuse, any kind of family violence, the rates for those things go up exponentially when you factor in job loss, economic stress, racial tension, basically all the things that are happening and have been happening over the last year, the likelihood or the statistics around family violence go way up. So being able to have a view into people's homes is one of the ways that we continue to monitor that. Typically you'd have teachers and other people who were kind of on top of those. They're all mandated reporters. So we're looking at those kinds of things. I think one of the other things that's a positive is that working remotely means that now we're able to access anybody in the state of Texas, because driving is not an issue. So transportation is not an issue. So now we can see anybody. So people who used to live in Bastrop County or other places where it was just really too far for them to drive to 45th and Lamar, because traffic is only getting worse in Austin. Now they can access our services. So there are more people now who are able to access our services in ways that they were not before. I think for some, the flip side is just that while we can see into people's homes, which is great, you have to be really careful, and you have to have established protocols so that people feel like they can communicate freely. Because anytime there's potential for violence, right? If you're the victim, right, and you're the female, and you're sitting next to your abusive partner, and we ask you, is there any violence in the home? You're not likely going to say yes when your abuser is sitting right next to you, or right. Or if you're the child and you're being abused by a parent, you're not likely to give anything away if your abuser is sitting right next to you, right? So it requires us to establish protocols and identify other cues and other ways to assess for violence in homes and things like that. But beyond that specific thing, I would say the pandemic has just created, on top of all the regular stuff that kids and adults are dealing with normally, normal developmental milestones and challenges, all of that stuff is amplified because now either you're doing remote school and so you're missing that socialization, or maybe you're in school, but it's very different and the protocols are different and you can't, move around and interact the way that you're used to. More isolation. Parents are often less present because they're often worried about finances, because maybe one parent has lost their job, or both parents have lost their job, or sometimes they're essential workers, so they're putting themselves in harm's way every time they go to work, or maybe they're just putting themselves in harm's way because they look a certain way, and the child might be fearful that their parent might not come home for just being themselves, right? So there are all these additional stresses as a result of what's happening that are compounding the typical normal kinds of angst and stress that young kids experience just through the normal developmental life cycle.
Well, no, those are definitely PowerPoints. So, Asha, I have a question that I kind of want to throw your way. Since we're kind of talking about, family, structure, and, talked about protocol and identifying some of those nuances that can make you say, well, maybe we're not getting the total truth out of this child. I'm sure you probably run into some similar instances, even with adults. And I just started thinking about this. How do we even start to maybe normalize conversations more around mental health, especially even on an adult level? And then I would love for Kristen to kind of talk about it more from a youth or a family perspective of, how do we what are the things that we can do to make this part of our daily rhetoric of conversations, either, from, either parent to child or caregiver to child, or even just as adults, to peers, to my friends, to my family members that I care about. There's just so much kind of trepidation or even apprehension that comes with having some of these conversations. So what can we do to kind of bring value to what you all do? I mean, we've definitely shown or talked about the value for sure. And I think we've driven that point home, but I would love to just kind of get into how do we create those conversations that just becomes a daily part of what we do?
I would say the first part is being okay with being vulnerable. I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine, and she mentioned something about her mental health. And of course, I saw through it because I'm a clinician and I'm trained to see it. And then I said, "You're not even being vulnerable with yourself." And she was like, "You're right." She was like, "Nope, you're right. I can't even argue with that." And so the first part, of course, is being vulnerable with yourself. And once you're vulnerable with yourself and you have that knowledge of self, you get to this place to where you're like, okay, now I can communicate the things that I need, because I know that I'm vulnerable when I feel this way. I know that I'm vulnerable when someone reacts this way to me, with me. I know that I can get vulnerable or I can feel uneasy about something. So that's the first part. You have to identify your vulnerabilities and the things that make you feel uncomfortable. And then from there, when you go out and you ask people, like, how are you doing? What's going on? Most people will respond with, oh, I'm surviving. And then I always respond to them. It's like, okay, when is it okay to just live? Because right now you're surviving, but at what point have you lived to be able to experience the happiness that you're seeking? Which what most people say is like, I just want to be at peace. Well, what does peace look like if you're consistently surviving?
Okay, let me stop you right there, just real quick, all right? Because it's something, you said some powerful things right there. So I kind of just want to pause for a quick second. I think you're absolutely correct. So a lot of times, I believe that those little small cliche statements are ways that we just condition ourselves to justify the things that we're subjecting either ourselves to, or that just that we're being subjected to, period, right? Oh, I'm surviving. It's not, I can just keep on stepping. You just keep on pressing on, right? Those little small cliches that we throw around, especially within communities of color, right? Because these are very things that we face just daily. So we come up with these ways to kind of go along to get along. So I know the first thing you said was, accepting your vulnerability or finding ways to tap into your vulnerability. And I think that's super, super, super important. But we know that a lot of people just aren't there, right? So what are some things that people can do just to identify that vulnerability or that lack thereof?
The first part, I always go through like brain muscle memory and childhood trauma. So one of the first things that I try to touch on is, family history. What are some toxic traits that you realize that you're carrying over into your adulthood? And then I always put out this quote that I saw on social media, which was powerful. It says, psychology says that we as children try to do things that would have saved our parents. And so a lot of how we live our life is avoiding the things that our parents did or that our community has done or that, and so it's identifying what are you compensating for? And in that you can kind of identify what it is you're avoiding or the things that you're struggling with. Because again, like I think I had a conversation with someone about always working. Right? Like one of the things was always working, and people would ask me, well, why do you always work? And I was like, because I don't want to be poor. And again, that's a trauma response. And then a part of that is if I'm not making money, I'm gonna feel it in my body. You gonna know when I'm broke. I promise you gonna know when I'm broke. I am gonna be in a situation where I'm isolating. I start to be tense. I get sick. I start to experience somatic symptoms where like I'm just in a place where I don't know what's going on with my body. And I'm back and forth to the doctor, and I'm trying this quote where someone said, your mind will speak to you and your body will yell at you. And so what happens is over years, you got these traumas. Oh, I don't want to go out because I'm scared that I'm gonna witness somebody dying in a club because of, street cred or whatever the situation is. Or, I'm afraid of being pulled over by the police because I'm Black and I might die. And like, it's these little things, and these worries are the things that are talking to you. Your mind is telling you you should be fearful. Your mind is telling you that you have to worry about this. Your mind is telling you this, that, and the other. And then it comes out in your body where, again, you come in contact with a police officer, you tense up, or you clench to the steering wheel, or if you come into contact with a situation that causes you anxiety, your heart rate increase. You start, so you got to kind of identify, like, are you really in the moment? And a lot of times we're not, because we're conditioned to believe that we have to consistently be working. As a kid in our community, if you're sitting at home and you're laying across the floor, the first thing your parents do when they come in the house is, why you ain't clean up your room? You need to get up. You need to be doing something. Go outside. Find you something to do. Da, da, da. It's never, can I get 5 minutes to relax, mama? And as parents, we don't realize that that's conditioning us to believe that it's not okay to sit still. And so we lose the ability to be in the moment with ourselves and with other people.
Yeah.
I would just add that, we are, as humans, are really adept at lying to ourselves about any number of things, but your body never lies. It never, ever lies. And so everything that you suppress and withhold, it comes out, right? It might come out in overeating. It may come out in drinking too much. It makes itself known with other vices like alcoholism or drugs. Your body is always communicating. Like, we don't always listen, but your body does not ever lie. And so however much we kind of hold on to things, it always comes out somehow in our body is telling us. So I 100% agree with what Asha is saying. And I think too that in our community, I think certainly historically we've been conditioned to sort of be tough, to stiff upper lip, to suck it up, be a man up, whatever, right? And I think that society reinforces a lot of those ideas. And I think anytime we kind of tap into our vulnerability, then you're viewed as weak, soft, all these other things that are perceived as negative. Women want strong men, manly men, whatever that means. Probably, I think for most men, that probably means I can't be somebody who cries. I can't be somebody who, is not working 12 hours a day, or, there's all these things that are inherent in these statements. And we all take those statements and whatever that means to us, but that's what we're kind of trying to live up to. I think remembering that at the end of the day, and I think Asha said this earlier, when you're on your deathbed, you are not going to be saying, I'm so glad I worked, 14 hours a day. I'm so glad that I missed my child's baseball games, football games. You're not going to be saying any of that, right? You're going to be saying, I'm so happy that I have my family with me, all the time that I got to spend with my family. These are not, it's unfortunate that often these things, it's that saying, why is youth wasted on the young, right? Oftentimes when you kind of get to be older and my age, you're starting to recognize why some of this stuff is important, but it is important. And, it's important for us also to make a living, but finding, life is about, I think, living versus surviving is about finding a place of balance, right? You have to find some kind of balance between working enough so that you can live and live relatively comfortable and not working so much that you miss out on your family, that you miss out on your kids. Everybody's got to find whatever that midpoint is for them, and it's not going to look the same for everybody. But ultimately, that's really what everybody needs to seek so that you can get what you need and work and do whatever you need to do to take care of your family, but also not so much that you're ignoring them or that, you're not in touch with them, because then you become older and you want to spend time with your kids and you got a whole bunch of resentful teenagers and 20-something who don't really want to have anything to do with you because, hey, you didn't come to any of my games. You missed all my concerts. You didn't do any of the things that mattered to me. Why should I show up at your house for Christmas? Why should I, not go visit my boyfriend and instead go do, why would I do that? Right? It always comes back. These things are certainly circular. And so I think really kind of working towards a more balanced, finding a more balanced position where you can live fully, not perfectly.
Yes.
You won't have as much money as you could ever have dreamed of, but you'll have enough. And you'll also have this love and support and the connection with the people that matter most to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, I totally agree. Awesome points. I will say this, that we are going to take some questions for the first time from our audience. So for our folks in our audience, please drop your questions into the comments. I have a couple more questions, so I'm gonna give them some time to add their questions in, but please at this time, start thinking about anything that you would love to ask for either of our professionals that we have on our panel this evening. And I'll go ahead and get back to our agenda preset questions. So we've done a great job at really talking about the value of mental health services, how it can play a role in our everyday lives. But one thing that a lot of people think of mental health services, that they are associated with folks that are, let's be honest, either affluent, right, and have a higher level of disposable income, or they can even place other barriers that we've already kind of touched on as to why they may feel that mental health services are not accessible to them. So if you don't mind, Kristen, talk about how your services are accessible to the community. And Asha, I'd like for you to kind of just piggyback on that and talk about maybe some alternative ways for folks that are thinking about pursuing or even engaging or exploring mental health services, how they can make that a reality for themselves.
Sure. First, I would say that Austin Child Guidance Center, we offer sliding scale fee. We accept most insurance. And we have a lot of programs that are grant funded. So as an example, we have a crime victims program. So if you've been a victim of a crime in any way, that includes bullying, that includes domestic violence, mugging on the street, you or your child have been affected by that in any way. If you meet that criteria, you could get your services free. And so there are, when you call in or kind of contact us for service, you should ask about those services, because if you meet those criteria, then you get nothing for your services. I think we also offer the only walk-in clinic that's for children that I'm aware of in Central Texas. So you can call, you don't need an appointment. We offer that twice a week. And so for people, maybe you've had something really recent happen to you and you feel like you need to get in really quickly, that's certainly a resource, and that's, again, open to anyone. Our services are offered in Spanish and in English. We do all that we can to try to make our services accessible and open to everybody. If I could, I just want to say one thing.
Yes.
I'm suspecting that Asha will have something to add, which is that one thing that I think affects certainly communities of colors, and I would say definitely the African American community, is the role that the interplay between mental health services and religion. And so often you'll get people, who will just kind of feel like, they can pray all of their issues away. If I pray hard enough, if my heart is open enough, if I'm sincere enough, God will, right? And again, I am in no way going to disparage the power of prayer. What I am going to say, though, is I think that there's a notion that you kind of have to do one or the other. And I think that that's a false notion. I think that both and is the way to go, right? If you want to talk to your pastor about whatever's going on in your family, or if there is some, a lot of churches have like couples that counsel other couples on marital things, there's nothing wrong with that. But most times these are not going to be licensed mental health professionals. And so they're offering support and advice strictly from an anecdotal perspective. Again, nothing wrong with that. When we chat with friends and family members, that's essentially what we're doing. But these are not licensed mental health professionals, which means that they're not necessarily going to know if they're saying something that's going to trigger you. They're not necessarily, they maybe don't know, if they're encouraging you to do something, but are not aware of a certain, dynamic in your relationship, that what they're offering is actually harmful to you, right? So what I would certainly, I think, try to also encourage people to understand is that you can certainly seek out support and counsel from whatever your faith tradition is, but that doesn't mean that as a result, you should not then also go to counseling. And that while prayer is really important, I would argue kind of necessary, it is not instead of mental health support. It is in addition to. I think that the notion of both of these things being important and necessary for optimal mental health, I think is a message that needs to be put forth much more strongly, certainly in communities of color.
Yes. So I will pick up on the original question, and then I'm gonna go back to that.
Okay.
So to add to how to access services within the community. So again, most companies do take traditional insurance, but if you are one of those who work at companies where they offer you the cheapest insurance possible and you have a high deductible, high insurance plan, 9 times out of 10, you probably still cannot afford it. And if you can, you have to choose between therapy or a doctor's appointment. It's kind of one of those situations. But I always encourage people, whenever you end up in a position where you have a job that has a high deductible, high insurance plan, is always get that HSA or the FSA account. Most companies pay into that, whether it's $100 every pay period or $50 every pay period, whatever. But those HSA accounts can be used to cover mental health services. That's one piece of it. The other part of it is if you work, 9 times out of 10, your company offers some sort of employee assistance program where they provide free services. Now, what I will say is in those instances, sometimes you will have to advocate for a clinician that looks like you. So I do get a lot of calls, and I'm pretty sure Kristen did when she was in private practice as well, where you have individuals that have EAP, but we don't accept it either because we don't know about it or because we're not added to the panel. But you can advocate to get a clinician of color added to that list. You can say, hey, I went through the list of people that you have, but I don't feel comfortable. I would like someone of color. And you can provide them with that clinician's information. And then they can do an emergency contract or do an exception option where they allow you to get those free services through that clinician. And of course, the clinician has to be open to doing the EAP company, depending on the back end, the financial end of things. That's another.
Real quick, not to put you on the spot. Do you know what those acronyms stand for? Just for our community, I just want to make sure that when they, if they say EAP or HSA, just so they can go in with some knowledge.
I probably did say those too fast. I'm sorry. So EAP is an employee assistance program. So again, most major companies, school districts, nonprofits, for-profit companies, most of them offer it. If they have over a certain amount of employees, they do offer it. And You would have to ask. You would contact your human resources department, or most companies market it and they give you these flyers when you first get hired, and they say use these services. So the EAP services sometimes, in most cases, provide mental health, legal support, legal aid, financial support, and I think there's like another health and wellness or something like that. It's usually all included in that EAP service. You do not have to use all of those services at once. You can say, hey, I'm struggling with something, and then the company will say you get 5 free sessions, 3 free sessions, 20 free sessions, whatever that looks like. And they also sometimes cover no call, no show. So if there's a situation where you could not meet your get to your session, some of those EAP programs do cover that. So EAP, Employee Assistance Program.
Okay.
HSA is a health savings account. So a health savings account, you can get it if you have a high deductible, high insurance plan where your deductible is I think it's $1,000 or more. So if your deductible says that you have to pay $1,000 in healthcare expenses before we cover 20% of or before we cover 80% or 90% or whatever that looks like, then the health savings account, it's a pre-tax deduction. So you put money into that account for healthcare expenses. That's one way to get it covered. And then there's a flexible savings account, which is almost like the daycare savings account that now companies offer for individuals, where it's another pre-tax deduction. You put money on there before taxes. It reduces your taxable income, and you can utilize that to cover services. If you have insurance, or if you don't, that's something that you can utilize. I think that's so HSA. Okay. There is the EAP, HSA, FSA accounts. There's the EAP, of course, your regular insurance. And then you also have the option of utilizing the local nonprofits wherever you are located. So I know here in Austin, What's in the Mirror is a nonprofit here for the LGBTQIA community, and they cover your mental health services up to so many sessions. If you go to them and you say, hey, I need sessions, they don't offer direct services, but they will cover that cost for you by their preferred list of providers. And then there's other nonprofits out here who are donating funds for people to go get mental health services. I always say a closed mouth don't get fed. So if you know you need help, ask someone. Somebody will have an answer for you. And so again, she touched on some ways where you have the VOCA grant, which is the Victim Services Grant, where they will cover for those who may have gone through some type of traumatic experience. And then also, if you're in the military or you've come out of the military, you have the opportunity of going, of course, using the VA services, or you can, they have other programs like the MHN or some other like almost like social work type companies that connect them to the providers that they need access to, and they kind of mitigate the costs for those members if they're seeking a certain type of provider. So I think I answered all that. I hope I didn't talk too fast on that.
No, you're good. I just try to keep the pivot an acronym free zone, just because anybody who goes back and they want to listen, to what we're talking about, I just want to make sure that they would be able to take the information that we're giving them and utilize it. And sometimes just when we have, we operate with this kind of level of knowing and thinking that, we can just put a string of letters out there and someone who hasn't done this before can just grab a hold of that information. So I thank you for breaking that down and kind of giving that perspective. People know that, hey, these services are actually a lot more accessible than you may have thought that they have been. So I think that is super, super, super important. Let me see here. I was going to see if we have any questions. Don't forget, you can ask your questions and we can try to get to them if you all have any. Let's see, we do have one question. Any advice for how to help someone who appears to be suffering from mental health issues but isn't ready to get professional help?
Whew. That's a heavy question because a lot of times that's usually the case. We have friends who call us every 5 minutes about a situation. And you're like, maybe you should go talk to them. Now you my friend. That's what I got you for. And so in situations like that, one of the things is probably trying to help them identify, like, what is your biggest source? Why is this what is it doing to you?
Yes.
That's a question that ask them, what is this doing to you? How harmful is it to you if you continue that? And then if they say, well, I'm going down the spiral, I think it's not, I'm hopeless, I'm helpless, then say, hey, like if you're helpless or if you're hopeless, why not, I can help you make a call to someone. Here's the crisis text line. These are professionals who are here to help you, who do non-traditional avenues of therapy, who like, if I can't answer the phone, these are some resources. They will answer the phone, they will talk to you, they will calm you down. And if you're ready to make that step, they will connect you. And if you're not ready, give them a call back a third time or a fifth time. But use those services because those are also free for people to be able to access. But if you're a friend or a family member or just someone in the community and you're taking on other people's traumas and experiences and their emotional load, then you probably will need to start seeking help yourself if these people aren't taking that next step of getting professional help, because it can be draining for you to see your friends and to see the people in the community go through these things, and it's draining for you. And then when it comes up again, you say, hey, I got a therapist. We talked about this. And, you kind of highlight the positives of therapy if you also have gone through therapy or if you feel like you're going to need it yourself. So just validate them in their feelings, help them identify, like, if you're going down this road, how far do you think you're going to get?
Right.
And then go from there.
Yeah. Kristen, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I would add too that I think there are some people, and I think we've all had friends like this, who kind of suck all the air out of the room. And so they make you tired, or they're just a lot of work, right? We might love them dearly, but when you're going to be around this individual, and a lot of times those are people that are struggling with something, and they're not, they're kind of using their friends and other people to kind of spread whatever it is rather than kind of addressing it head on. So I think sometimes what happens in those instances is those folks start to feel isolated because eventually friends pull away, family pull away, people start not answering the phone when they call because it's just like, this is a headache, this is too much work. I know if I pick up this phone, it's going to be drama, and I have my own. I can't deal with, right? So I think that's one indicator for people who maybe are needing services and are not yet ready to get it. And I think, someone might point out, we're not equipped to manage whatever it is that you have going on. We care about you and we love you, but most of us are not mental health professionals, and those of us that are, I promise you that you can't be a counselor truly to your friends or your family. They may want that from you, but we as mental health professionals knows that that's not how it works. We don't have any objectivity. We cannot, we can, as a friend, offer advice, make some suggestions, but there's a difference between friends giving advice and therapy. And so you need to really tell that person, like, I can care about you to a point and we can talk about this to a point, but past that point, you really need someone, a professional, to help you unpack whatever this is, develop some strategies, kind of better understand whatever it is that's distressing you or keeping you stuck in whatever this thing is that you have going on. So I think that it really starts to have diminishing returns when people start leaning on friends and family, either a therapist, rather than seeking someone out. And usually it has to do with preconceived notions about what therapy is and what it is. And this was something that you asked earlier about kind of therapy being for wealthy people. I mean, I think part of that comes from Woody Allen movies and other movies where you kind of imagining kind of like rich white people in New York laying on somebody's couch. First of all, that's not, that's analysis. That's not traditional brief therapy. That's these days, a rarefied kind of a therapeutic approach. Most people don't do that. And now, kind of like a lot of things, it's more affordable. Therapy is accessible and more affordable. Kind of, back in the day, flat screen TVs used to cost thousands of dollars, $50 at Walmart. So, I think therapy has become more of a commodity, which is sort of good and bad, but certainly what that means is it's that more accessible for more people. And I think, as Asha said earlier, if you know where to look, and if you kind of advocate for yourself, you can find an alternative avenue towards getting your needs met.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think all those points are great. And even you can kind of take a hybrid approach. I think you use both of your approaches together, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
We've covered a lot of ground tonight and really got into some very deep topics. And I appreciate both of you all for taking the time. I just have one more question that I'll pose to you both. I know that we kind of talked about the times that we're living in now and just kind of, day to day, how just kind of crazy things can be for us all with a lot of ups and downs. What are some things that you do daily, in your personal daily routine, or even some things that you can subscribe to some of your clients that they can do on a daily basis, just to kind of get them to the point of connecting more with their mental state and where they are emotionally, especially some things you can do to kind of, start your day. I think that it's important that we just take the time to even just identify where we are mentally and just kind of what are some ways in which we can do that just for our own, kind of self-care, Kristen, I'll start with you, if you don't mind, just kind of putting some things out there that you can just say, hey, well, this is some things that you can do daily or that I do daily that really help me out.
Sure. I guess I have some general rules of thumbs and some things that I've kind of started doing over time that help me. So, and a lot of these times, these things might sound simple, but it's not actually as simple as it sounds. And one of the things is like, as a society, we are trained to look for what's not right. So if something is like, I don't know, 90% amazing, we're going to focus on the 10% that wasn't amazing.
Yeah.
There's, if something was like, almost perfect, we're going to focus, society teaches us to focus on the little bit that wasn't quite right rather than all the rest of it that was amazing. So I would say, identify the things that are working and do more of that. Do more of what's working, focus on the things that are going well, do more of that. It sounds simple, but I think that that's a habit that I think will serve people well over time.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Asha, what would you like to add to that?
I'd say the same thing. I'm one of those people who practice gratitude. I know a lot of times we go throughout the day, again, worrying about the sorrows of yesterday and worrying about the grief of tomorrow. And so it's important to be mindful and be one with self. And then always ask yourself, am I treating myself how I would treat someone else? So if you would wake up and text so-and-so every morning, good morning, beautiful, get up and tell yourself, good morning, beautiful, or treat yourself to something nicely, whether that means getting up, going to the kitchen, making some warm tea or some coffee in the morning. And you know how they say, enjoy the weather. Yeah. Like today, I actually sat outside on my patio and just took in the pleasures of watching the bees fly across my yard. And you know what I mean? Just getting out and practicing more self-care with yourself, of course, socially and safely, with everything that's going on now. And just be open to getting out, even if it's taking a walk through the neighborhood, walking to the mailbox every day to make sure that you go out and get sunlight. Because a lot of times we are sitting in the house and we're just doing things that are detrimental to our mental health. So.
Yeah, I mean, just to add, I'm not a mental health professional. I'll just put out there two things that I do that have definitely been beneficial to me. I always give myself at least 30 minutes to an hour every morning to myself and also every evening. So I kind of close out the day, kind of just relaxing and just kind of thinking about, either what I did well or what I want to improve on, just, from a positive aspect. And I do the same thing in the morning, just being thankful for everything that I have and thankful for the opportunity just to improve upon the day before. So I think it just kind of helps set my attitude for the day about how I try to approach each day. So
yes,
those are just my couple things that I do, and, I think it's just important for everybody to kind of find a routine that works for them. It's super, super, super important.
Mm-hmm. And I know we're closing out, but I didn't go back to the religious aspect, and I want to make sure I touch on this.
Okay.
I'm sorry, y'all. I know people got to eat dinner, got to put their kids to bed, but I want to make sure that, like she spoke on religion, I always tell people, no, I'm not a religious counselor. And yes, there are some individuals in the religious world who don't go through mental health training, and they provide services to their members from a religious aspect. I did graduate from a Baptist university, and at that university, we had a lot of preachers and a lot of deacons and deaconesses who came and specifically took courses on mental health so that they can provide the best services to their members. So there are some individuals out there who are taking that extra step, saying like, you know what, religion is great. I know my role, but I also know that I need more knowledge so that I can help the community that I serve. That's one thing. And then another thing is to remind people that faith without works is dead. So a lot of people use the Bible as what works for them and the moment that they're going through. And you know, they seek guidance from it. But I always remind people faith without works is dead. So if you believe that religion is the basis of your mental health, you also have to remember that you also have to do the work. And so doing the work may include you going to seek therapy services from a licensed clinician or a psychiatrist, medication management, or whatever that might look like. So always remind yourself, if you think that religion is the end all be all, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's not, and I'm not putting myself or other clinicians up there with the Lord and Savior. But what I am saying is you also have to do the work. You can't say that God is going to help me get out of this, because if you are putting in the work to get out of it, then for sure he's going to ensure you, he's going to see you through. So just be mindful of that whenever people start saying, oh, God is going to fix it. Okay, faith without works is dead. It's dead. Remember that. You got to put work in to get to that place you're trying to get to. And it's the same with mental health. So.
No, I mean, I agree. I think that's just a good approach towards life, is that, you know, like you're saying, anything that's worth having is worth working for, you know, and, you know, that's really how we need to look at it. So to pawn, you know, that situation changing on anything, you know, outside of that work that you're putting into it, you're ultimately going to be serving yourself short. So I think you're absolutely correct, you know, so I want to once again say thank you to both of you all. But once again, the guests for this evening were Kristen Pierce-Vreeke, who is the Executive Director, of Austin Child Guidance, and then also Asha Creary, who is the Licensed Professional Counselor and CEO of Crave Counseling. So thank you, ladies, once again for participating in this evening's segment. I've learned a lot. I've learned a ton. We usually have a musical guest, but I almost didn't even miss it because the conversation was just so fruitful. So thank you both for taking the time and participating this evening. I also want to say thank you to the Economic Development Department for helping us power this podcast, along with the Cultural Arts Division, and of course, the team and staff at the African American and Cultural and Heritage Facility. And last but not least, of course, I want to say thank you to all of our listeners who even participated in the conversation and listened. Also, we will be archiving this podcast and all of our episodes on our YouTube page, which we will list on our website, and also it will be automatically archived on our Facebook page. So you can go to www.facebook.com/AACHF Austin, and you can catch all of our episodes thus far. So ladies, thank you so much for participating. It's been great. And audience, I look forward to seeing you on March 17th, where we will have 2 more guests that will speak to the body and soul portion of our Mind, Body, and Soul series for March. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, TJ.
Thank you.